Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Naia Nopianti Sagita from class A1 PBI 2023 with student ID 23220014. Here, I will present a translation assignment to fulfill the final assignment of the Theory of Translation Studies course. Meeting 2, Translation Studies. The process of translation between two different written languages involves the translator changing an original written text, the source text or ST, in the original verbal language, the source language or SL, into a written text, the target text or TT, in a different verbal language, the target language or TL. 1. Medium restricted theories. 2. Area restricted theories. 3. Rank restricted theories. 4. Text type restricted theories. 5. The term time restricted. 6. Problem restricted theories. Meeting 3. Translation. Translation for the professional translator is a constant learning cycle that moves through stages of instinct, experience, and habit, and within experience through the stage of abduction, induction, and deduction. Process of translation. First, translate. Jump into the text feed. First, translate intuitively. Second, edit. Think about what you've done, test your intuitive response against everything you know, allowing an intuitive first translation to challenge a well-reasoned principle that you believe in deeply. Let yourself feel the tension between intuitive certainty and cognitive doubt, and don't automatically choose one over the others. Use the act-response adjustment cycle rather than rigid rules. Third, sublimate. Internalize what you've learned through this give and take process for later use. Make it second nature. Make it part of your intuitive repertoire, but sublimate it flexibly as a directionality that can be redirected in conflictual circumstance. Never, however, let subliminal pattern bind your flexibility. Always be ready if needed to doubt, argue, contractive, disbelief, counter, challenge, question, facilitate, and even act hypocritically. Meeting 4. Types of translation. 5 types of translation. 1. Dynamic translation. Dynamic translation is also called as fair translation. In the process of translation, the meaning from source language is conveyed by using the natural expression in the target language. Everything that considers as foreign or less natural, both relate to the cultural context and its disclosure, are avoided in TL. 2. Pragmatic translation. Pragmatic translation focuses in the accuracy of the information conveyed by SL. This translation does not pay much attention to aspect in SL. The example of this type of translation can be seen in the technical documents, which shows the information and facts. 3. Aesthetic poetic translation. This type of translation focuses on the aspect of aesthetic, feelings, and emotion. We can find aesthetic poetic translation in the translation of literary works. A translator of literary works must be able to maintain not only the content but also the aesthetic aspect. That is why this translation also called literary translation. For example, translation of poetry, prose, and drama that emphasize emotion and language style. 4. Ethnographic translation. The purpose of this type of translation is to explain the cultural context of SL and TL. Translator must be able to consider the different use of words which have similar forms and meaning in the one language. They need to find the equivalent words in the TL to be able to describe limited cultural problems in the SL. 5. Linguistic translation. Linguistic translation is a translator only content linguistic information that is implicit in the SL, made explicit in the TL. This happens because a sentence, for example, has the form taxa sentence that have structure, the appearance same but the inner structure is different. Before being translated, the sentence must be back transformed or explained its component first so that the sentence can be understood properly. Meeting 5. Translation method. A translation method refers to the way of particular translation process that is carried out in terms of the translator objective, while the translation methods relate to whole text translation procedures are used for sentences and a smaller unit of language. Methods of translation based on UMARC. First, source text. 1. Word-for-word translation. 2. Literal translation. 3. Faithful translation. 4. Semantic translation. Second, target text. 1. Adaptation. 2. Free translation. 3. Idiomatic translation. 4. Communicative translation. Meaning 6. Translation techniques. Translation methods influence the entire translate text. Techniques is a practical way to analyze and classify how the matching search process is carried out. Basic characteristic of translation techniques. 1. Translation techniques influence the translation results. 2. Translation technique compare SL with TL. 3. Translation techniques influence the small text units, for example, words, phrase, and sentence. 4. Translation techniques are discursive, logical, natural, and contextual. 5. Translation techniques are functional. Translation techniques. Hands-on techniques. 1. Borrowing. 2. Kaku. 3. Literal. Indirect techniques. 1. Transposition. 2. Modulation. 3. Compensation. 4. Adaptation. 5. Description. 6. Discursive creation. 7. Common equivalence. 8. Generalization. 9. Particularization. 10. Reduction. 11. Substitution. 12. Variations. In practice, a translator can use 1, 2, 3, or 4 techniques at once in translating one utterance. 1. Single technique. 2. Duplet or couplet. 3. Triplet. 4. Quadruplet. Meaning 7. Translation procedures. The translation method concerns the entire text, while the procedure translation applies to sentence and smaller language units such as clauses, phrase, word. Procedure is strategy used by the translator for solve internal problems. Best translation process the translator's own goals. Translation procedures. 1. Shift. 2. Shift the meaning. 3. Naturalization. 4. Contextual matching. 5. Not matching. Meeting 8. Literal translation. Newbert states that one word of an SL text and a TL word in the translation rarely correspond semantically, grammatically, hardly ever. In fact, literal translation is correct and must not be avoided if it secures referential and pragmatic equivalence to the original. Meaning 9. Translation procedures. 1. Transference. 2. Naturalization. 3. True translation. 4. Cultural equivalent. 5. Functional equivalent. 6. Descriptive equivalent. 7. Synonym. 8. Compensation. 9. Reduction and expansion. 10. Paraphrase. 11. Equivalent and adaptation. Translation procedures 2. 1. Seeds or transposition. 2. Modulation. 3. Componential analysis. 4. Translation label. 5. Recognized translation. 6. Couplets. Meeting 10. Translation and culture. Definition. The way of life and its manifestations that are particular to a community that uses a particular language as its means of expression. Each language group has its own culturally specific features. Cultural features in a language must be known in translating, and the words which design the closest equivalence must be employed. The things that translators should consider in translating cultural words. First, motivation. Second, cultural specialist relation text to the topic. Third, linguistic levels to readership. Cultural categories. 1. Ecology. 2. Material cultures. 3. Social cultures. 4. Organization. 5. Gestures and habits. That's all my presentation. Sorry if there are any shortcomings. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.